This video is going to be covering order of operations with 3 and 4 operations going on. Let's review over the order of operations, the checklist you should go through. So kids used to call it PEMDAS, and the P would stand for parentheses. This way with the G, the G stands for grouping symbols. And so grouping symbols are things like parentheses, which is what you already knew, but brackets, other types of brackets, radical signs. These can be treated like with the same priority, and also absolute value bars. And then E is exponents, MD is multiply divide, AS is add subtract. I also want to talk about why I put the multiply divide and add subtract next to each other, because you could also see those as divide, multiply, subtract, add. If you see both operations, you do the one that's on the left. Let's just go ahead and start practicing some of these. If you're watching this video from home, I'd say pause it right now. Try working this out on your own, see what you come up with. So it says to simplify the expression. We have this expression, these numbers and operations, and to simplify means to work it down, work it as far as you can, perform as many operations as possible. So G, for grouping, we do have some grouping. We have the square root of 256. For these types of problems, you won't have a calculator, so you need to know that the square root of 256 is going to work out to a certain number. What I recommend doing, and what most math teachers are going to recommend you do, is drop down the operations and numbers that you haven't used yet. Notice how I dropped down my 8 plus. I dropped down my minus 3 times 2. So I just have a space here for what square root of 256 simplifies to. Works out to 16. So now we're going to look over here. I don't have any exponents, so we're going to go to the multiply dividing. I do have some multiplying. Once again, I'm dropping down what I haven't used, and the 3 times 2 is 6. Now we have our add subtract. I've got 2 positive terms here I'm going to regroup. So I'm going to drop down my negative 6 or minus 6. And then I'm just going to work that out. So that's still the add subtract checkoff here. And there you go. That whole thing works out to 18. It simplifies to 18. Here's another one, pause it if you'd like to work it out. So we have grouping symbols. We actually have 2 here. This fraction is just a big division problem, and also the square root of 64. So we can take care of them both. Once again, I'm going to drop down the things I'm not using. Notice how I'm dropping down my minus sign and the times symbol. And then we work both of these out. 28 over 7, square root of 64. And then we have exponents. We're going to drop down the minus 4 times 8, and that's going to work out to 25. Now we have some multiplying or dividing. We have the multiplying, and we're going to go ahead and take care of that. We're going to drop down the 25 minus, and we get this. And then we have our add subtract. Now a lot of kids get thrown off by this because they forget their integer rules. A lot of kids will just write down the number 7. But remember, 25 minus 32, this is 25 positives, 32 negatives. There's more negatives. Your answer is going to be a negative 7. So this whole expression simplified to negative 7. Go ahead, pause the video, try working this one out. I've got 2 sets of grouping symbols. I've got the radical here, square root of 196. I also have this 4 minus 9 in parentheses. I'm going to drop down what I'm not using. I'm going to go ahead and drop down empty parentheses, maybe close them in a little because I'm going to have a single number work out here. Square root of 196 ends up being 14. 4 minus 9 is negative 5. We've got an exponent. 1 to the power of 4. I'm going to drop down my other items that I'm not using. 1 to the power of 4 is not 4. Hopefully you remember that. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is a 1. And then we have some multiplying. 1 times negative 5. I dropped down my 14 plus, and then that worked out to negative 5. So now we're in our add subtract mode. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this with a single sign, and then you're done. And then we have this one, 12 over 3, 12 divided by 3 minus 3 times 4 plus 5 to the second power. Some grouping symbols, we have that fraction up front. We're going to drop down everything else. That's going to work out to a 4. We look for exponents. We do have an exponent. We're going to drop down everything we haven't used. That's going to work out to 25. We've got multiplying and dividing. I'm going to drop everything else down. That works out to 12. Add, subtract. So I recommend you group your positive terms together. If you had a T-chart, this would be one of those T-chart things where you'd get your positives together, and you'd have 29 positives, 12 negatives. From there, it works out to 17. Moving on. So here we go. Pause it. Go ahead and try working it out. We have parentheses inside of brackets here. We've got a lot of groupings going on. We have this parenthesis inside the big one. We'll have to worry about this one after we take care of what's in here. And then we also have this, square root of 289. So I'm going to drop down the things I'm not using. I'm keeping my parentheses though, just to play it safe. So in there, that's going to be a -7. Square root of 289 is 17. And we still have some more grouping, so we're not going to even look for any exponents yet. We're going to work that out, and that works out to -14. So we don't have any exponents, we don't have any multiplying or dividing now. We just have the add, subtract, and looking at this, -14 plus 17, 14 negatives, 17 positives, you're going to have 3 positives left over. And here we go, 2 to the third times the absolute value of 5 minus 7 minus the square root of 400. Pause it, try working it out. We're going to look at our grouping. We've got some grouping here as well as some grouping here. I'm going to drop down the things I'm not using, 2 to the third times, and then empty absolute value bars minus whatever this works out to. 5 minus 7 gives you -2. Square root of 400 is 20. That's another one you just need to memorize. From there, we're going to look at this grouping symbol still. Can't even look for exponents yet. Absolute value of -2 is 2. So everything drops, and there you go. Now we can look at the exponent. 2 to the third, don't say it's 6. It's going to be 8. So I'm dropping down what I don't use, and there you go. Multiply, divide. I'm going to take care of that. I'm dropping down the -20. And then we've got some add, subtract. And 16 minus 20 is going to be -4. I want to go back. One mistake kids might make is that at this step, they might write down 20 minus and then say, oh, that's 16. You can't just change the order like that. Commutative property doesn't work for things you're subtracting. And there you go. The main thing you need to do is show your proper steps. Don't start changing order of things. Just drop down things you're not using, leave some space for those answers, and then keep going. That's about it. Hope this helps. Best of luck to you.